Ambassador Crick stood before the massive observation screen in the Federation Council chamber. His 4 eyes blinked slowly as he watched the latest footage from Earth Colony 7. The humans had arrived on that frozen world only 15 standard years ago. What he saw now made his stomach turn with something between fear and wonder. The humans were walking outside without breathing equipment. "This is not possible," said Council Member Thrin, her feathered crest rising in alarm. "The atmosphere on that world contains only trace oxygen. No species can adapt that quickly." Crick said nothing. He had learned long ago that the word impossible did not apply to humans. He remembered when the Federation first made contact with Earth. The humans had seemed so fragile then. Soft skin, no natural weapons, a single heart. They needed to breathe every few seconds or they would die. They could not survive temperature changes that any proper species would barely notice. The Federation had felt sorry for them. Some members had even argued against allowing humans into the galactic community. "They will die out there," the Vorn representative had said. "Space is too harsh for such weak creatures." That was 200 years ago. Now the Vorn were very quiet in council meetings. "Show me the medical data," Crix ordered. The screen changed to display biological readouts from the colonists on Earth Colony 7. Their lungs had grown larger. New blood vessels had formed in their chest tissue. Most remarkable of all, small glands had developed near their airways that seemed to extract oxygen from the thin atmosphere more efficiently than any technology could. "Their children show even greater changes," the computer reported. Third-generation colonists display lung capacity 40% above Earth baseline. They also show increased resistance to cold and modified fat distribution for heat retention. Thrin made a clicking sound of disbelief. 3 generations. Only 3 generations and they are becoming a different subspecies. "Not subspecies," Crix corrected her. "Still human, just adapted humans." This was what worried the Federation most. Humans did not just survive in new environments. They changed to fit them. And they changed fast. Faster than any evolutionary model said was possible. The door to the chamber opened, and High Counselor Emrix entered. She was ancient even by her species' long-lived standards, and she had been watching humans longer than anyone else in the Federation. Her gray scales had faded to near white, but her mind remained sharp. "I see you have found the Colony 7 reports," she said, her voice like wind through dry leaves. "Interesting, are they not?" "Interesting is not the word I would use," Thrin replied. "Terrifying might be more accurate." Emrix settled into her chair with a soft grunt. "I have been studying humans for 180 years. Do you know what I have learned in all that time?" No one answered. "I have learned that we are fools to be afraid of what they are. We should be afraid of what they will become." Crix turned away from the screen. "What do you mean?" Emrix waved one clawed hand at the display. "Colony 7 is just one example. Show them Colony 3. The screen flickered and new images appeared. This was a water world, where humans had built floating cities on a vast ocean. The colonists there had been living on the water for 100 years now. "Notice anything different about them?" Emrix asked. Crix studied the footage. The humans on Colony 3 looked wrong somehow. Then he realized what it was. Their hands and feet had changed. The skin between their fingers and toes had grown thicker, almost like webbing. Their bodies were more streamlined. And when one of them dove into the water, they stayed under for nearly 10 minutes before surfacing. "They are becoming aquatic," Crix whispered. "Not fully aquatic, not yet, but give them another 100 years. Emrix pulled up more data. Colony 12, the high-gravity world. The humans there are shorter and denser now. Their bones have become incredibly strong. Colony 15, the desert planet. Their skin has changed color and texture to protect against radiation. They need less water than baseline humans." "How is this happening?" Thrin demanded. "Evolution does not work this way. Changes like this should take thousands of generations, not a handful. Emrix made a sound that might have been a laugh. We asked human scientists the same question. Do you know what they told us? Silence in the chamber. They said they did not know, but they had theories. Emrix stood and walked slowly to the observation screen. Humans evolved on a world of constant change, ice ages, volcanic periods, floods, droughts. Their planet tried to kill them over and over again, so they developed something no other known species has. What? Crix asked. Flexible genetics. Their DNA is filled with dormant code, sequences that do nothing under normal conditions, but put humans under environmental pressure, and those sequences wake up. Their bodies start expressing genes that have been sleeping for millions of years. Genes for surviving cold, genes for surviving heat, genes for processing different atmospheres. Thrin's crest was fully extended now. You are saying they carry the genetic blueprints for multiple different species inside them. Not different species, different versions of themselves. Humans are not one thing, they are a possibility, a potential. Put them somewhere new and they become what that place needs them to be. Crix felt cold despite the warm chamber, and there is no limit to this. Emrix turned to face him. Her old eyes held depths of knowledge and concern. That is what I have been trying to determine for 180 years, and I still do not have an answer. She gestured and the screen showed a map of human expansion. In 2 centuries, they had spread across 47 worlds. Each colony showed its own unique adaptations. Some changes were small, others were dramatic, but all of them proved the same thing. Humans were not staying the same. We thought we were welcoming a single species into the Federation, Emrix said. We were wrong. We welcomed a species that could become anything, and now we must ask ourselves a question that keeps me awake at night. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the chamber. When humans have spread to 1,000 worlds, when they have adapted to 1,000 different environments, will they still be one species? Or will they be 1,000 different species, all remembering that they were once human? And what will that mean for the rest of the galaxy? No one had an answer. Crix turned back to the screen and watched the colonists on Earth Colony 7 breathe air that should have killed them. He watched their children play in the snow without protective clothing. He watched a mother hold her baby and smile, unaware that she was part of something that would change the universe forever. The Federation had made contact with many species over the millennia. Some had been peaceful, some had been hostile, some had been strange beyond understanding, but none of them had been like humans. None of them had been potential. The research station orbited a dying star. It was far from Federation space, far from human colonies, far from everything. This was where Dr. Venn had come to study the most important question in galactic history. What were humans becoming? She was not human herself. Her species, the Karathi, had lived in the Federation for 50,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched younger species join the galactic community and find their place. They thought they understood how the universe worked. Then the humans came along and proved them all wrong. Dr. Venn floated in the zero-gravity section of her lab, surrounded by holographic displays showing human genetic data. She had been studying this data for 30 years. She had written 47 papers on human adaptation, and she still felt like she was only scratching the surface. Her assistant, a young Karathi named Toll, entered the lab with a data pad. The latest samples from Colony 23 have arrived, he said. Show me. The holographic display shifted to show new genetic sequences. Colony 23 was a strange world. The planet had natural radiation that would kill most species within days. Humans had been living there for 60 years now. Look at these mutations, Toll said, highlighting certain sections of the data. Their cells have developed entirely new repair mechanisms. They can survive radiation levels that would destroy our DNA completely. Dr. Venn studied the sequences carefully. This is not just repair. Look here. They are using the radiation as an energy source. Their bodies have learned to capture it and convert it to something useful. Toll made a sound of disbelief. That is impossible. Radiation is harmful by definition. For us, yes, for them. Dr. Venn gestured at the data. They are rewriting the definition. She had seen this pattern before. Every time humans encountered something that should kill them, they found a way to not just survive it but to use it. On high-pressure worlds, their bodies had become denser to handle the weight. On low-light worlds, their eyes had grown larger and more sensitive. On worlds with toxic atmospheres, they had developed new filtering organs. Dr. Venn, Toll said carefully, may I ask you something? Of course. Does this frighten you? She was quiet for a long moment. Yes and no, it frightens me because I do not understand it. In 50,000 years, my species has barely changed at all. We are the same as we were when we first reached the stars. But humans, in 200 years they have become dozens of different variations, and they are still changing. Then why does it not frighten you completely? Dr. Venn pulled up an old image on her display. It showed the first human ship to reach Federation space, a primitive thing by current standards. The humans aboard had been wearing bulky suits just to survive the journey. Because I remember what they were: fragile, weak, unable to survive outside a very narrow set of conditions. The Federation looked at them and saw a species that would struggle to leave their home system, a species that would need our help to survive. She changed the display to show current human ships, sleek designs that could travel farther and faster than anything the Federation had built, crewed by humans who had modified themselves to need less food, less water, less sleep. We offered to help them because we pitied them. Now, 200 years later, we are asking them to help us. Their medical technology is advancing faster than ours. Their engineering is more creative. Their scientists ask questions we never thought to ask. Because they adapt, Toll said. Because they never stop adapting. That is what makes them different from every other species. We reach a certain point and we stop. We become comfortable, we become stable. But humans, they keep changing, they keep growing, they keep becoming more. Toll looked at the genetic data floating around them. What do you think they will become eventually? Dr. Venn was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. I think they will become whatever they need to be. And I think that might be the most important thing that has ever happened in this galaxy. On the other side of Federation space, Council member Krall was having a very different conversation about humans. He stood in the war room of the Vorn military command, surrounded by generals and strategists. The Vorn were a proud species. They had been the dominant military power in the Federation for 10,000 years. Their strength was legendary. Their tactics were studied in war academies across the galaxy. But now they were afraid. The latest reports from human space, one general said, activating a display. They have developed a new type of soldier. The image showed humans that barely looked human anymore. They were larger, with denser muscles and thicker skin. Their eyes had changed, developing a reflective layer that let them see in complete darkness. Most disturbing of all, they could survive being exposed to vacuum for several minutes without dying. They call them Void Marines, the general continued. Designed specifically for space combat, they do not need full environment suits. They can operate in conditions that would kill our best troops. Krall felt his claws tighten. How many? We do not have exact numbers, but we estimate at least 50,000, and more are being trained every cycle. Another general spoke up. This is just one variation. Human colonies are producing dozens of specialized types: high-gravity soldiers from Colony 12, aquatic forces from Colony 3, desert fighters from Colony 15, each adapted to their specific environment but all capable of working together. A diverse army, Krall said slowly, made up of specialists that no single enemy could counter. Exactly. No matter what environment a battle takes place in, humans will have troops perfectly suited for it. We cannot match that. No one in the Federation can match that. Krall walked to the display and studied the Void Marines. They were terrifying to look at, but what frightened him most was not what they were. It was how quickly they had been created. 50 years ago, humans could not survive in space without heavy protective equipment. Now they had soldiers who could fight in vacuum as easily as breathing air. What would they have in another 50 years? Another 100? "What are our options?" he asked. The generals looked at each other uncomfortably. One finally spoke. "Honestly, we do not have good options. If we attacked human space now, we might win, but the cost would be enormous. And even if we destroyed their current military, they would adapt. They would learn from their losses and come back stronger." "They always come back stronger," another general muttered. Krall thought about what he knew of human history. They had been conquered before. Many times, in fact. Empires had risen and fallen across their world. Each time, the survivors had learned from their defeat. They had changed their tactics, their weapons, their entire way of fighting. And that was before they could literally change their bodies. "What if we allied with them?" Krall asked quietly. The room went silent. "The Vorn do not ally," one general said. "We lead, others follow." "Yes, and that approach has worked well for 10,000 years, but we have never faced a species like humans before." Krall turned to face his officers. "What happens if we are wrong about them? What happens if they continue to grow and change, and we continue to see them as enemies? In 100 years, we might be facing creatures we cannot even understand anymore. Creatures that have adapted specifically to counter every weapon we have." "So your suggestion is to make friends with them?" "My suggestion is to acknowledge reality. Humans are not going away. They are not going to stop expanding. They are not going to stop adapting. We can either be their partners in whatever comes next, or we can be their opponents. And I do not think being their opponent is a war we can win." The generals did not like this. Krall could see it in their posture, in the way their scales shifted color. The Vorn had ruled through strength for so long that the idea of partnership seemed like weakness. But Krall had studied humans more carefully than his colleagues. He had read their history. He had watched their colonization efforts. He had paid attention to the small details that others missed. And he had noticed something important. Humans did not want war. Despite their frightening ability to adapt, despite the military power they were developing, they seemed genuinely interested in cooperation. They had joined the Federation peacefully. They had followed the rules. They had offered their technology and knowledge freely. They were not conquerors, at least not yet. But what would happen if the Federation pushed them? What would happen if the Vorn attacked and gave humans a reason to turn their adaptive abilities toward war? Krall did not want to find out. "Send a diplomatic message to the Human Council," he ordered. "Tell them the Vorn wish to discuss closer relations." The generals stared at him in disbelief, but no one argued. They had seen the same reports he had. They knew what humans were becoming. And they knew, deep down, that the old ways might not work anymore. Meanwhile, on Earth itself, a young woman named Sarah Chen was about to change everything. She was not special by human standards, not particularly strong or smart or talented. She was a geneticist working at a small research facility in what used to be called New Zealand. She studied human adaptation, trying to understand why her species changed so quickly. And one night, while reviewing data from the outer colonies, she found something that made her drop her coffee cup. "No," she whispered, "that cannot be right." She ran the analysis again, and again, and again. The results were the same every time. Human adaptation was not random. It was not just a response to environmental pressure. There was a pattern to it, a direction, as if all the different changes on all the different colonies were pieces of a larger puzzle. And when she put those pieces together, she saw something that made her sit down heavily in her chair. Humans were not just adapting to their environments. They were converging towards something that the genetic code had been building toward for millions of years. Every adaptation, every change, every new ability was pushing the species closer to a final form. A form that would not need air or water or food. A form that could survive anywhere in the universe. A form that was no longer limited by the physical constraints that bound every other species. Humans were not just evolving, they were preparing. For what, Sarah did not know. But as she stared at the data on her screen, she felt a strange mixture of excitement and fear. Her species was becoming something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. And it was happening faster than anyone realized. High Counselor Emrix received Sarah Chen's research 3 days later. She read it in her private chambers, alone, with the lights dimmed to match her somber mood. When she finished, she sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she spoke to the empty room. "So that is what you are becoming." She had suspected something like this for years. The patterns were too consistent to be random, but seeing it laid out in clear scientific terms was different. It made it real. Humans were not just a species anymore. They were a process, a transformation that had begun millions of years ago and was now accelerating beyond anyone's ability to control or predict. The Federation had welcomed them as newcomers to the galactic community. They had expected humans to eventually stabilize, to find their niche, to become just another species among thousands. They had been wrong. Humans would never stabilize. They would never stop changing. They would keep adapting and growing and becoming more until they were something entirely new, something that had never existed before in the history of the universe. And then what? Emrix did not know. No one knew. That was perhaps the most frightening thing of all. The future was no longer predictable. The old models, the old expectations, the old ways of thinking about galactic civilization, they all became meaningless in the face of a species that refused to stay the same. She looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there on dozens of worlds, humans were changing, growing, becoming. And the Federation could only watch and wonder what they would become eventually. The answer, Emrix suspected, would be unlike anything anyone could imagine. 20 years passed. In that time, Sarah Chen's research spread throughout the Federation. Some species reacted with fear, others with fascination. A few tried to understand and copy what humans were doing, but their attempts all failed. Whatever mechanism allowed humans to adapt so quickly was unique to them. Dr. Venn published her final paper on human evolution. In it, she concluded that humans represented something unprecedented in galactic history, a species with no fixed form. They are not defined by what they are, she wrote, but by what they can become, and there appears to be no limit to that potential. The Vorn, true to Council Member Krall's suggestion, formed an alliance with the human government. It was an uneasy partnership at first, but over time it grew stronger. The Vorn provided military experience and tactical knowledge. The humans provided adaptability and innovation. Together, they became the most effective peacekeeping force the Federation had ever seen. But the real changes were happening on the outer colonies. On worlds too harsh for any other species, humans were thriving. Colony 7 had become the largest producer of rare minerals in Federation space, thanks to workers who could survive in conditions that would kill anyone else. Colony 3 had developed underwater farming techniques that fed billions. Colony 23 had found ways to use the planet's deadly radiation to power clean energy for half the sector. And the humans themselves kept changing. A new generation had grown up on each colony. They were more adapted than their parents, more suited to their specific environments. Some could breathe air that would poison their Earth-born ancestors. Some could see in wavelengths beyond the normal human spectrum. Some could communicate in ways that did not require sound at all. They were still human. They still felt the same emotions, thought the same thoughts, dreamed the same dreams. But their bodies were different. Their abilities were different. They had become variations on a theme, each one unique, each one perfectly suited to their world. And yet, despite all these differences, they remained connected. The colonies traded with each other freely. People from different worlds met and married and had children who carried genes from multiple adaptation lines. Information and culture flowed between them without barriers. They were not one species anymore, but they were not truly separate either. They were something new, something that had never existed before. A family of species, a collection of possibilities, a future that was still being written. Sarah Chen was 45 years old when she finally understood what she had discovered. She was visiting Colony 15, the desert world, to collect samples for her ongoing research. The colonists there had changed dramatically since the first generation. Their skin was darker and more resilient. Their bodies processed water more efficiently. They could survive for days without drinking anything at all. But it was not their physical changes that caught her attention. It was something else entirely. She was sitting in a cafe in the colony's main city, watching people go about their daily lives, and she noticed something strange. The colonists moved differently than people on Earth. They communicated differently. They interacted differently. Their entire way of being seemed subtly altered. She asked a local about it, a man named Dax who had been born on Colony 15 and had never left. "What do you mean?" Dax asked, his modified eyes blinking in the harsh sunlight that would have blinded an Earth-born human. "You all seem connected somehow, like you know what each other are thinking." Dax smiled. It was a strange smile, one that seemed to contain knowledge Sarah could not access. "We are connected. Not telepathy exactly, but something close. It developed naturally over the generations. Being adapted to the same environment means our bodies and minds have converged in ways that let us understand each other without words." Sarah felt a chill despite the desert heat. Is this happening on other colonies too? "I think so. I have spoken with people from Colony 3 and Colony 7. They report similar things. We are all developing our own group minds, I suppose you could call them, networks of awareness that link us together." Networks within each colony. Yes, but also between colonies. When I meet someone from another world, I cannot read their thoughts the way I can with my own people, but I can sense them, feel their presence. It is hard to explain. Sarah thought about this for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "You are not just adapting your bodies, you are adapting your minds too." "Of course," Dax said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "The body and mind are not separate. Change one and you change the other. Humanity is becoming something new, Dr. Chen, something better, something more connected and more aware and more capable than we ever were before." "Does that frighten you?" Dax shook his head. "Why would it? This is what we have always been doing. Humans have always changed to survive. We have always grown beyond our limitations. This is just the next step." "The next step toward what?" That strange smile again. "We do not know yet, but we are looking forward to finding out." The Federation Council met in emergency session when Sarah Chen presented her findings. The chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of species. They had all heard rumors about what was happening in human space. Now they were about to learn the truth. High Counselor Emrix, ancient and frail but still mentally sharp, presided over the meeting. She had waited decades for this moment. Now it was finally here. Sarah Chen stood before the assembly, a small figure surrounded by alien faces. But she was not afraid. How could she be? She was human, and humans did not stay afraid for long. "Distinguished members of the Council," she began, "I am here to tell you what humanity is becoming." She activated a holographic display that showed the genetic data she had collected over 25 years. Complex patterns swirled through the air, representing changes that were still difficult for most species to understand. "When humans first joined the Federation, you saw us as fragile, weak, limited, and in many ways you were right. We could only survive in a narrow range of conditions. We needed constant support from our technology just to leave our home world." She changed the display to show current human colonies, dozens of worlds, each with its own adapted population. "But you underestimated us, not because you are foolish, but because we are unprecedented. In the entire history of the galaxy, no species has ever changed as quickly as we have. No species has ever shown the range of adaptation we display, and no species has ever developed the kind of collective awareness that is now emerging among our colonies." The council members shifted uncomfortably. This was what they had feared. This was what had kept them awake at night. "I know many of you are frightened," Sarah continued, "and I understand why. Change is scary. The unknown is scary, and humanity has become the biggest unknown in the galaxy." She paused, looking around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces watching her. "But I am not here to frighten you. I am here to reassure you." This was unexpected. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. "Humanity is changing, yes. We are becoming something new, but we are not becoming something hostile. We are not becoming conquerors or destroyers or threats to the Federation's existence." She changed the display again, showing images of human colonies working alongside other Federation species. Humans adapted for vacuum, helping Vorn engineers repair space stations. Humans adapted for water, working with aquatic species on ocean farming projects. Humans adapted for extreme conditions, exploring worlds that no one else could reach. We are becoming partners, collaborators, problem solvers. Every adaptation we develop is one more way we can help the Federation. Every new ability is one more tool we can offer to the galactic community. High Counselor Emmerich spoke for the first time. "And the group minds, the collective awareness you mentioned." Sarah nodded. "That development is new and still not fully understood, but early indications suggest it will make us more empathetic, not less. When you can sense other minds, when you can feel what others feel, it becomes much harder to cause them harm. Our increasing connection is making us more peaceful, not more aggressive." "But you are still changing," another council member said. "You are still becoming something different, something beyond what you were. How can we trust that the humans of the future will remain friendly?" It was a fair question. Sarah had asked it herself many times. "You cannot trust that completely," she admitted. "No one can predict the future with certainty. But consider this. In 200 years of change, in dozens of different adaptations, in every new ability we have developed, we have never once used our evolution for conquest or destruction. We have used it for survival, for exploration, for helping others." She looked directly at the council member who had asked the question. "The changes in our bodies reflect the changes in our needs. We do not need to dominate others. We do not need to destroy. What we need is to explore, to discover, to understand. And that is what we are adapting to do." The chamber was silent. The weight of Sarah's words hung in the air. Finally, High Counselor Emmerich spoke again. Her voice was soft, but it carried throughout the chamber. 200 years ago, I stood in this very room and argued that humans should be admitted to the Federation. Many disagreed with me. They said your species was too primitive, too limited, too fragile to survive in the wider galaxy." She rose slowly from her chair. Despite her age, her presence commanded attention. "I was right that you should be admitted, but I was wrong about why. I thought we were doing you a favor, offering you protection and guidance. I did not realize that you were the ones who would end up changing us." She gestured at the display, still showing images of humans working alongside other species. "Look at what you have accomplished. In 200 years, you have spread farther than many species spread in 10,000. You have solved problems that had defeated us for millennia. You have shown us that adaptation and change are not things to be feared, but embraced." She turned to face Sarah directly. "You asked us to trust that future humans would remain friendly. I cannot speak for the entire council, but I can tell you what I believe." The ancient counselor's eyes were bright despite her years. "I believe that whatever you become, it will be magnificent, and I believe that the Federation is fortunate to be able to watch it happen." 50 more years passed. The changes Sarah Chen had documented accelerated beyond anyone's expectations. Human colonies developed abilities that seemed like magic to other species. Some learned to manipulate electromagnetic fields with their minds. Others developed senses that let them perceive time differently. A few could even survive in the hard vacuum of space without any protection at all. The group minds grew stronger too. What had started as vague awareness became true communication. Humans on different worlds could share thoughts across light years, connected by a network of consciousness that science still could not fully explain. But through all these changes, humanity remained humanity. The core of what made them human, their curiosity, their creativity, their capacity for love and wonder and hope, that stayed the same. It simply expressed itself in new ways, through new abilities in new forms. The Federation continued to watch, and wonder, and marvel. Ambassador Crix, who had first observed Colony 7's adaptation decades ago, was long dead. But his granddaughter, Ambassador Crix now, had taken his place on the council. She had grown up watching humans change. She had studied them her entire life, and she had reached a conclusion that her grandfather had only begun to suspect. "We thought we were the advanced species," she told the council in her first address. "We thought humans were newcomers who needed our guidance, but we had it backward. They were never just newcomers. They were pioneers, explorers, the forward scouts of biological evolution itself." She looked at the human representatives in the chamber. They looked almost normal at first glance, but if you looked closely, you could see the signs of change. The subtle differences in their eyes, their skin, the way they moved. "They are showing us what life can become," Crix now continued. "Not what it is, but what it can be. Every adaptation they develop is a proof of concept for the rest of us. Every new ability is a demonstration that the limits we thought were fixed can be broken." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "The question my grandfather asked, what will humans become eventually, is not one we should fear. It is one we should celebrate, because whatever they become, they are bringing the rest of us with them. They are expanding the definition of what is possible. They are showing the universe that life is not a fixed thing, but a process of endless growth and change." In the audience, a human woman listened to this speech with tears in her eyes. She was Sarah Chen's great-granddaughter, born on Colony 15, with the adapted skin and eyes of that desert world. But she also carried genes from Colony 3 and Colony 7 and a dozen other worlds. In her blood, a dozen different adaptations flowed together. She was human, and she was something more. She was the future, sitting in the present, listening to aliens talk about what her species would become. And she knew the answer that they were all searching for. Humans would not become one thing. They would not converge on a single form or a single ability or a single way of being. That was not what evolution did. That was not what life did. They would become everything, every possible adaptation, every possible form, every possible expression of what biological life could achieve. They would spread across the galaxy, changing to fit every world they encountered. They would develop abilities that no one could currently imagine. They would push the boundaries of what was possible further and further, forever expanding the range of what life could be. And through it all, they would remain connected. The group mind that linked all human colonies would grow and strengthen, ensuring that no matter how different they became, they would never lose touch with each other. They would be a family of species, a collection of cousins, a network of consciousness spanning the stars. That was what humanity would become eventually. Not a single thing, but an infinite range of possibilities. Not a fixed form, but an endless process of growth and change. Not just survivors, but creators, shapers of their own evolution, masters of their own destiny. The Federation would watch this transformation unfold over the coming millennia. They would see humans become things that seemed impossible today. They would witness adaptations that defied every model of biology they had ever created. They would meet human subspecies that were as different from each other as any two alien species in the galaxy. And through it all, they would remember what humanity had been when they first made contact. Fragile creatures on a small planet, barely able to survive in space, looking up at the stars with wonder in their eyes. That wonder had not gone away. It had simply found new ways to express itself, new bodies to inhabit, new forms to take. Humanity was not just adapting to the universe. Humanity was adapting to become the universe, to fill every niche, occupy every environment, explore every possibility. And the Federation could only watch and wonder, and eventually, perhaps, learn to do the same. Because that was the gift humans were giving to the galaxy. Not just new technology or new knowledge or new abilities, but a new way of thinking about what life could be. A new understanding that change was not something to fear, but something to embrace. That evolution was not a slow process that happened over millions of years, but something that could be directed and accelerated and shaped. Humanity was teaching the universe to grow. And the universe, slowly but surely, was starting to listen. The end was not really an end, it was a beginning. 500 years after first contact, humans had spread to over 1,000 worlds. Each world had its own unique human population, adapted to its specific conditions. Some were barely recognizable as human anymore. Others looked almost unchanged from their Earth-born ancestors. But all of them shared something fundamental: that capacity for change, that flexibility, that refusal to accept any limit as final. The group mind had evolved too. It was no longer just a network of awareness between colonies. It had become something deeper, something more profound. A collective consciousness that held all of human experience, all of human knowledge, all of human wisdom. And yet it did not eliminate individuality. Each human was still their own person, with their own thoughts and feelings and dreams. The group mind was not a hive. It was more like a vast library that everyone could access, a shared space of consciousness where ideas and experiences could be exchanged freely. Through this network, humanity remained unified even as it diversified. No matter how different they became physically, no matter how strange their adaptations, they could always connect with each other. They could always find common ground. They could always remember that they were all branches of the same tree. The Federation had changed too. Watching humans evolve had inspired other species to attempt their own adaptations. Some succeeded, most failed, but the trying was what mattered. Humanity had shown them that change was possible, and that inspiration spread like fire through the galactic community. Old fears faded. New partnerships formed. Species that had been rivals for millennia found themselves working together on projects that would have been impossible before. The galaxy was becoming more connected, more cooperative, more willing to embrace the new and unknown. And at the center of it all, humanity continued to change, to grow, to become. The question that High Counselor Emmerich had asked so long ago, what will humans become eventually, finally had an answer. Everything. Humanity would become everything. And in doing so, they would lift the entire galaxy with them, toward a future that no one could predict but everyone could help create. The Federation watched and wondered, and for the first time in its long history felt genuine hope for what was to come. Because if humans could change so much in just a few centuries, imagine what the next millennium would bring. Imagine what the next 10 millennia would bring. The universe was vast and full of possibilities, and humanity was just getting started.